Hello and welcome everyone. We are joining, we're in all of this together with the coronavirus, all in this together. And although we've been doing this for a while, it's good to be back because we were off live for 3 weeks. So it's good to be back. I'm Mona Duncan, and Jan Moray is here as a co-host. And so today Jan is the one that chose our topic, and she wants us to talk about labels, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So, Jan, you want to fill us in on where we're going with this?
Yes, yes. You think about how, as human beings, we need to categorize things, and that helps us to understand what's going on. You see something, or you learn something new, and you try to find something that it's similar to, and so you kind of put those things together. And we like to be orderly and to put things in their respective places, and that helps us to keep things straight and to understand what's going on. But those labels can hurt us too, because it helps us to understand, but then we might have some preconceived notions about the label that that really doesn't apply in that situation at all. But that does change the way we think about things and the way we talk about things, because we've got these preconceived notions. And we've got the stereotypes about different people and stuff. And I was just trying to start a conversation about labeling and categorization and stuff, because I know for me, whenever somebody assumes what they think that I'm thinking, I'm like, what makes you say that? Well, you normally do this, or this is. I said, how do you know what I do? I am an individual. So just trying to bring attention to the fact that yes, there are some things that we're like, other things that other people or other things, but that doesn't totally define me. And to try to be open about what else could be going on, instead of assuming that you understand what the person's values are and stuff.
Okay, so you're talking about, if we just refer to a dog as a mutt, you have a tendency to be, off-putting toward that animal because maybe it's a stray or something. But as you begin to realize, it's a mutt, it's maybe not a registered pedigree and all this kind of stuff, but has a lot of good qualities to it.
Right.
And it's more than just a mutt.
Be a friendly, happy dog, and be a real good partner to have with you, a good protector, and not just an old mutt that isn't worth anything.
Right. Well, have you listed any of those labels that you do wear proudly, or at least you acknowledge them?
The one thing that I always go back to, and I may have told this story on this broadcast before, but it's been a while if I had, is I was born with a genetic type of anemia, and it's a minor form. It really doesn't affect my life very much. But I remember as a young child, my mother always cautioning me, well, you have the anemia, and so you have to watch out. You can't run as much as the other kids. You got to take breaks and all this kind of thing. So I didn't. There was a lot of things I didn't think that I could do because I had this label of anemia. But with anything, there's a spectrum. There are people that are very severely affected, and there's those who are minorly affected. And when I was 30 years old, I went on a hiking trip, and we hiked the Grand Canyon. We hiked with our backpacks. It was a 2 nights and 3 days. We hiked all the way down, and then came back up. And when I finished that, I was just so excited, because I had always been told all my life, you can't do that kind of thing. But it's like, yes, I can. And so in my particular case, it was limiting me, because I wasn't even trying stuff because I had this label. And I was warned, from the very beginning not to. And so it's, don't get constrained by these labels.
So you're saying that all too often, if we have a label put on us, we live down to it?
We do. We can. Absolutely. We can. And I see people doing that with mental disorders. they'll say, well, I'm bipolar, and I'm going, so what does that mean? Or I had one client once who was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and she said, and I said, well, so what does that mean to you that you're schizophrenic, and what is it keeping you from doing? And why don't you try to do some of those things you don't think you can do? And that one client who was schizophrenic, she actually tried some of those. She wouldn't even try to socialize and to interact with other people because she was always told that she had this disease. And it's like, don't let that put you in a box. Don't let that define you.
Yeah, if we can just begin to think, well, what if I'm not?
Right.
What if I could?
What if I could?
What if I could? What if I could be more outgoing? What if I could, even if I stumble over everything I'm saying, what if I could begin to, and it's like, well, I just like to say, well, trying is lying. But again, back to those spectrums, I like to look at the fact that, if your go-to answer is, well, I can't, my recommendation is you won't know unless you try.
That's right. Absolutely.
You won't know unless you try. So rather than just go to that I can't, or at least try. But if you use that excuse of, well, I tried, if you just use it as an excuse, then you really are lying. And we know that deep down inside.
Yeah.
And so sometimes we've labeled ourselves a certain way, or there may have been something there that we are failing to see, and maybe someone calls us by our true name, and we begin to realize, oh, wait a minute, I do resemble that remark.
Yeah. Right.
And that but I need to own it so that I can do something about it.
Right. And if you really believe that you cannot do something, then you're right. You can't do it. And so question that belief and say, well, like you said earlier, well, what if I could? Let me give it a try. Give it a good try.
Right. Give it the old college try. Give it the best try that you can, not just a passing cursor to say, well, I tried and I failed.
Right.
I know.
Right.
In working with the prisoners, they would always say, well, I tried that. Yeah. And, making a few suggestions. Well, I tried that. I said, well, no, wait, let me see if I understand what you're saying. You're saying that you have done it your way 472 times and it hadn't worked. You tried it another way once or twice and it didn't work. So you're just going to give up on ever trying anything again. And whenever we realize that we just keep going back to those ruts again and again and again,
yeah,
and it's pretty rutty and we don't rock the rut, then it's time to really do something about it.
Yeah.
And
because there's, if you really want to do something really is keeping you from getting where you need to be, then you just keep trying different ways. It's because one way doesn't work doesn't mean that no way is going to work. And so that does say a little bit about you. If you're just giving up, then, well, maybe you really don't want it that badly enough if you're willing to give up so easily. Yeah.
There's a little thing that I like to do with clients sometimes is I'll just pick something that I have. I usually always have, I have my own pens with my name on it and that kind of stuff, And a lot of times I'll just pick up one of the pens and I'll just hand it. I'll say, here. And they'll reach out and take it. Or if that, I always have some mints, not too far away. And so I'll just pick up a mint and I'll hand it to them. I'll say, here. And they'll take it. And sometimes it's thank you. And just kind of go on. I said, no, wait a minute. I said, let's talk about this. I said, I handed you something and you took it. And so, but I'll hand it back to her. Here, it wasn't for me. I said, yeah, it's for you. And when did it become yours? When did it become yours? And sometimes they'll hand it back. Well, here, I don't. I said, no, but let's start over again. I said, well, it became mine whenever you gave it to me. I said, okay, let's start over again. Hand it back to me. Here, I have a gift for you, something I want to give you. And so they'll take it kind of reluctantly, and they'll take it. I said, now when did it become yours? It becomes ours when we receive it.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it takes, really getting into that. You mean, this is mine. And so what that label was that was put on you, when did it become yours? It became yours when you received it.
Right.
And then you begin to, like I say, many times it becomes an obstacle and you live down to it rather than overcoming.
Yeah.
And so we need to just receive. And so that goes back to saying, well, okay, so I just want to receive everything and let it grow or die organically.
Mm-hmm. Without any preconceived notions about whether it's a good thing or a bad thing.
Right.
Just try it out.
Right. And if that negative label or that whatever sticks, then rather than being angry or upset about it, I want to own it and see what I can do to not go there again.
Yeah. And don't become a victim because of it. Don't become a victim like with the label of being anemic. Oh, I can't go hike the Grand Canyon because I'm anemic and there's no way I'm going to be able to make it. Well, you don't have to be a victim. Try. I mean, there's always ways that you can accommodate yourself so that it is a little easier for you to do. Take more breaks, allow more time to get there, and have your snacks or your water or whatever it is that you need. But if it's something that you really want, go for it. Don't let it pull you down.
Right. And I think
aren't there always a lot of ways to interpret anything?
Oh, absolutely.
Including a label, and some interpretations are more accurate than other interpretations. I'm talking about labels now.
Sure.
So it comes down to how anybody interprets something.
Right. And that's why I'm going to receive everything that's handed me, whether it's verbally or what. I'm going to receive it. But I'm going to receive it and let it either grow or die organically. Meaning that, there have been times that I've really had my feelings hurt deeply. And sometimes once I got honest with myself, there was a reason for it to hurt deeply. But I didn't want to own it. And so now as I own it, or as I at least legitimately look at it and try to look at all the little, how I misconstrued, how they misconstrued, and then just let it go. I'm not going to take it and hold on to it, whether it's about someone else or what. And, my mind is pretty quick to go to things to judge people. Mm. And I think of the Bible story, and it's a good story regardless of what a person's belief system is. That there was a woman that had been caught in this horrible sin or lie or whatever, and they were going to stone her, crucify her, kill her, do all this kind of stuff. And the people were there, they were yelling and, yeah. And so Jesus came along and they was, I guess, wanting his encouragement or to stone or to fix everything or whatever. And Jesus just didn't do anything. And then he just kind of, well, I think the scripture says he squatted down and began to write in the dirt, or just, make little curly cues or whatever. I don't know what was going on. And then after a while, he looked up from being in that squatted position and he said, those of you that have never done anything wrong, you're the ones that's to throw the rocks. And it says, starting at the oldest, they begin to drop the rocks and run off, which maybe that's where a little wisdom is when we begin to realize, oh, well, okay, I've thrown a few rocks before and hurt some people. Anyway, my point is that then eventually when everyone had walked away and the woman was there and all frustrated and everything, and Jesus said to her, and he says, well, where are your accusers? And she looked around and there was no one there except, Christ was there. And he says, neither do I condemn you. The thing of it is that she was, you know, according to the story, she was legitimately
In the
in the
wrong.
wrong.
In the wrong.
Yeah, but I'm not condemning you.
Yeah.
But the thing of it is that he was also saying it to that mob that was willing to kill her. I'm not condemning you either.
Mm-hmm.
Drop your stone and walk away. Drop your stone and walk away. Because we have, even though we do have, you know, judge not lest you be judged. Well, it's to judge the action itself, not the motive of the heart.
Well,
Yeah.
and it goes too, is like, okay, they were, you know, going to stone her because of something that she did. And so it's like, well, isn't there anything, so what makes the thing that she did so much worse than anything else that you have done? And who are we to decide what's good behavior and what's wrong? I mean, it's the culture that sets that up, and we all do things that we're not very proud of, and that are not in our best interest or anybody else's best interest, and that those things happen. And going back to Glasser with the whole total behavior, you know, everything that we do is the best thing that we know to do at that particular moment.
And it's for a purpose.
And yeah.
For a purpose.
Yes.
And sometimes what those purposes are, you know.
Yeah, I mean, when you're desperate, when you're unhappy, and when things just aren't going well in your life, you get pretty desperate, and you'll do some drastic things that you wouldn't normally do at a time when all is going well. And so it's just one more thing to add to that list of stuff that you feel poorly about yourself.
Right.
And so it's not looking at what you did or what's going on. Let's look at, okay, you're hurting, and how can we make that better? What can we do to turn that around? So let's really look at the need and not pay so much attention to the deed.
Right. And even though Jerry's 100% correct, even though there is a lot of different interpretations.
There are.
The way we see it, the way they see it, the way somebody else sees it. And if we just choose to, and it is a choice, and it's one that, you know, has to be made individually. You can't make it for everybody. That as we begin to choose to the fact that I'm not the answer man. I'm not the one that's fixing everything. You know, there may be times that we can show some kindness, whether it's, but the bottom line is that if I'm the one in the wrong, then I'm the one, I'm really, basically and truly, I'm pretty much the only one that can do anything about it.
Right. A lot of people can tell you what you need to do, and they will. But you have to be true to yourself and what you decide to do about it, if you do anything about it.
And even if, which so often we want to get mad at the person that pointed it out.
Yeah.
You know, how dare you see that in
right.
me? How's that, you know, I thought I was covering it up real well or whatever. And to just realize that, well, rather than to getting angry, or even if it does come, don't stay there. Don't continue to stew in that anger. Begin to get honest with self and say, well, again, like I said before, do I resemble that remark?
Right. Or hadn't really thought about that before, and maybe there's a little bit of truth to that. Maybe that's hitting a little too close to home, and that's why these emotions are welling up inside of me.
Right. Like my daughter one time when she was, I don't know, about 7, and I was fussing with someone, and I was very unkind. And anyway, I said, come on, let's go. And we just left and got in the car, and the person that I left behind was crying. And I mean, they were hurt. And my daughter said, Mom, you hurt her. And I just didn't care. And I even said, I don't care. I was right. I don't care. You know, she needs to figure out what's going on in life. And my daughter, without an ounce of guile in her, she just looked at me. She says, Mom, that's the problem. You don't care.
Oh.
But
Ooh.
here's the thing. I know.
Oh.
Because here's the thing, when I'm talking about, there are times that I can give 3, and that was one of them, 3 times that I can remember distinctly when someone said something that inadvertently or indirectly told me my true name, gave me a
Yeah.
true label.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it spiraled in. She said, you don't care. And so my actions were definitely that, because I could choose somebody out and spit them out, and no big deal. But you know what? It zeroed right in. I mean, it was a stone. Trouble, Mom, you don't care. It was a stone that came over here and said, but you do. You've just gotten such an ego there that you think you don't. So it's time to get honest with yourself. Time to get honest with yourself and realize that whenever you make a difficult matter even more difficult, and that which was exactly what I've been doing.
Yeah.
And sometimes just a little, well, I don't condemn you. I don't agree with it, but I don't
Right.
condemn
Right. Right.
you.
So what
And,
did you do then after you had
well,
gone?
well, I went on and left, and I did a lot of thinking about it, and it really did begin to transform my life in a very positive way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Later in the day, I called the person and I just apologized for being. I said, you've. Again, it goes back to the fact that I am not the person to do any correcting in your life. It's up to you.
Right.
You know?
Right. And that is so hard. That is so hard when it's somebody you love and or care about, or you care about. I mean, you're protecting yourself when you walk off and acting like you don't care.
I was trying to, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because that person was not taking my wonderful sage advice.
Right.
Matter of fact, they was just really getting ugly to me too, So it was that like, sometimes you think, well, I have to protect myself, but which is what you just said.
Right.
But in the process of that, not only was I hurting someone else and hurting my daughter and what kind of example setting for her,
Yeah.
but then also I was hurting myself. And I didn't realize that until my daughter brought that out. You don't care.
Yeah.
Because the truth came out that, yeah, I really do.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so interesting to watch these little kids that they pick up on things, and they're not shy to say something. And yeah, I mean, that's another label too. We label them as being immature and too young to know what's going on, but they may know a lot more than what we give them credit for. So maybe we should listen to our kids, listen to what they have to say, because they're putting all the pieces together and trying to make sense of life. And that's another input that we don't need to ignore.
Yeah. And it's in our innocence that we can see those things, even though we don't know what they are.
Right.
Or the children,
Right. In that particular case, they are just providing information. This is what I'm observing here.
Yeah.
How do you differentiate between a good label and a bad label?
Well, I think it depends on how you're looking at it. I mean, we all, because a good label for me might be a bad label for somebody else.
And, to say, oh, well, that's good. Well, when did I become the judge of what's good and what's not? That's something that I have really begun to really think about lately, that's interesting. It's kind of a generic thing. So you can go, well, that's interesting.
Yeah. Whenever somebody says that, they don't agree with you.
It is still interesting, rather than saying that's good, that's bad, that's what, because I'm just not the purveyor of those things.
Could you give some examples of a good label?
I like to say to people, I don't know that it's a label or not, but that's not the way I see you. I see you as this, I see you as that. Because then it puts the blame on me, or it puts it on me as to what I am seeing, and they can verify as to whether or not that's what they meant or whether they did not mean. Back to that same person back whenever my daughter was 7, and she's in her 40s now, so it was a long time ago. But back to that very same person, you know, that has remained in my life. And I have learned to do that whenever they are saying something that I'm very much, I'm saying, what I think I'm hearing you say is this. Correct me if I'm incorrect.
Well, another example that popped into my mind is a label of being Muslim. And for a lot of people, seeing somebody who's Muslim is a bad thing. But for the Muslims, it's a good thing. And so it really depends on what your beliefs are and what your point of view is. And we were just in Bali, which is why we had this vacation from Greet the Week. We were supposed to be in Vietnam as well. We didn't make it to Vietnam, but we were in Bali, and our driver from the airport, he said that I guess there's 2 religions in Bali, Hindu and Muslim. And Bali apparently is the only mostly Hindu island of all of Indonesia. But then he also put Christians into that category. He said, so all of us Christians, Muslims, and Hindu live in harmony over here. We don't have any problem with each other. It's a good life, and we don't hold anything against them. But here in the United States now, the whole Muslim label, it has a very negative connotation for a lot of people. And so, I mean, that's an example where it really depends on who you are and what your belief system is as to whether something is good or bad.
And
Well, then it's a matter of interpretation. But for me, at least, I think we generalize too much. Let's use the example of Muslims. And you can't say all Muslims are good or all Muslims are bad.
Right.
Some of them, the jihadists, I consider bad. But that's less than 1% of the Muslims. So to generalize is very dangerous.
Well, and that's my whole point for bringing this topic for today, is to generalize is very dangerous. But a lot of people tend to do that.
Yeah. Well,
and learning not to. It has to be within ourselves. And to realize I am criticizing, I am labeling, I am judging. And to get honest with ourselves when we do that, and then choose to not. And that if that wayward person missteps, I mean, maybe speak about it, but don't just automatically judge or label.
Right.
maybe it's the generalization that's the problem.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of problems associated with it. I just wanted to bring an awareness to it and say, think about it.
Yeah.
When you find yourself judging and you're finding yourself jumping to a conclusion that this person is bad, or this type of people is bad, stop and think, where is it on that continuum? Is that a minority on one end, or is that what the majority is? And even if it is what the majority thinks, let me just take that one person and really get to know that one person, instead of putting all my judgment in the way of my even getting to know who this person is, because they might end up being somebody you really enjoy being with.
Yeah. Well, our time is up.
Our time
So
is
we need to close out for today. And the thing of it is about Greet the Week, it's never to come up with an answer.
right.
It's just to look and see as what possibly can be done, or maybe what Jan or I have begun to learn to do that's working a little bit better than what I had in the past, so that every day can be better and better.
Thanks, Mona, for that. Thanks, everybody, for watching on the replay, and we'll see you next week for another edition. Bye-bye.
And I'm glad to be back.
Glad to have you back, Jerry.